listening to the Noble Life podcast, brought to you by Noble Life. Noble Life is an online health and lifestyle coaching system that guides you through the long-term improvements of your physical, psychological, personal and practical life. On this podcast, we bring you guests from different specialities who embody the Noble Code of pride, passion, purpose and power. Through our guests' stories and experiences, you'll be inspired and informed on how to optimize yourself and improve on balancing your own lifestyle to become the best version of yourself. On this episode of the Noble Life podcast, we have George Castro. George is a former professional MMA fighter and now an MMA coach, specializing in athlete management, MMA coaching itself, as well as strength and conditioning. Now, Castro has worked closely with Brandon Vera, who's the former UFC heavyweight competitor and the current ONE FC heavyweight champion. And he's been doing that for the last 4 years. He's quite recently moved to Manila to bring the Alliance MMA gym into the Philippines and to improve the lives of people in that area through this medium. So, welcome to the podcast, George.
Fraser, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, man. I look forward to this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I knew that I needed to have you on the podcast from the first time that you and I were chatting, because it was actually...
Yeah, we kicked it off pretty good.
Yeah, well, it was also kind of a weird one, because all the boxers, when we were down at a boxing event in Manila, and all the boxers were practicing their walk-in stuff, and George and I are sitting hanging on the end of the ropes, as if we were going to do some crazy wrestling moves. And George turns around to me and says, "When I was wrestling," and I was like, "Sorry, what now?"
Yeah, instant friendship, huh? But yeah, that was a good event, man. It was fun, and I'm glad you were able to make it down. And it was a very good cause, It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved that event. It was great, and I'll definitely be down for the next one. So,
awesome.
George, let's go straight into the story. Let's go straight into the history of what brought you from your very beginnings into MMA and then all the way through to what you're doing right now. Because I always find it's very important to know where somebody's come from so that you truly appreciate the story.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick story on this. I had a great childhood. My parents were great. We had a great upbringing. Mom and dad worked hard, always showed us how to work hard. I didn't dabble in drugs. I think the only time I ditched school was to go to baseball games, the spring training and stuff, because that's what I wanted to do. My whole life was baseball. That's all I wanted to do, and wanted to play for the Dodgers, and that was my dream. My grades were just good enough just so I could play. You know what I mean? That's all I was cared about. I knew I wasn't going to be a doctor or something like that, so I knew I had to do something physical. Baseball was with me since I could remember. So after high school, I had a full ride scholarship to a junior college in Arizona. I was graduated. I was 17, never been away from home, and it took out to admit this, but I think me never being away from home and being young, I think it took me out of my game. So when I went down to college and I was getting on the team, and when I went there, I didn't perform like I should have. And I think now that I can admit it to myself, I was scared. I came back to Tucson and I didn't know what to do with my life. I'm like, baseball was everything to me. And I remember telling myself when I left for college, I'm never going to have a regular job again. I'm just going to play sports now. I'm going to go and play college. And after that is the big leagues. Well, that didn't happen. So I came home and I was lost. And I got me just a regular job at a supermarket bagging groceries. And I happened to see this gym that was opening up next door to the supermarket, and a small gym. I ended up working out there, hanging out with the guys, and a very small gym, And I saw the money that was coming in, because when I was working there, I was pretty much managing the place, And it just didn't match up to how their lifestyle was. I saw the vehicles, I saw this. I'm like, man, I see the money coming in and coming out of here. There's something not panning out here. So got to be a little bit closer to them, became good friends, and they ended up being drug dealers. So I'm 18. I'm looking at these guys with money and stuff that I thought was cool. So just kind of got into that. I actually did some runs for them. And, the town I grew up in was only an hour and a half from the Mexican border, so drugs were just there. I never liked doing drugs. I was never a drug addict, but I was addicted to making the money. And it was a rush for me to get away with it. Not make it too long. I ended up getting in trouble in Missouri. I was 18 years old. They pulled me over. I had a trunk full of weed. I thought I was invincible. Now I look back like, I got warned many times with my parents. I remember calling my dad, "Hey, Dad, I'm in jail. When you get home, get your shit and get out the house." I was 18. I'm sitting in jail. Don't really know what to do. I had some friends to call me. Everything was set up. If you get in trouble, this will happen as long as you don't snitch. The whole thing that everybody knows. So ended up getting out. I said, okay, got away with this one. Don't know how. It was a real shady thing that happened. The jail people told me what lawyer to get. It was just really weird, I looked at it like, hey, I got a break. I'm out. A few months later, I'm still thinking I'm invincible, and I get in trouble again. This time, it was in the Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. Now that I look back, like my whole life was just running and looking over my shoulder. I wasn't happy, but I was addicted to the money making, So I ended up doing one more run, and I got in trouble. And I ended up doing 3 years in prison in the state of Arizona. I had just turned in when I turned 21, so I wasn't even a grown man yet. I was still a kid because I was so much into sports, and I ended up getting my A certification while I was locked up. I was still doing that in there, and I was playing sports, and I survived a riot in there. I survived crazy fights in there. It was just a different world, and it made me grow up really fast. But it also, I hate to say this, it taught me how to be a better criminal. So when I got out, I already was in my head thinking, well, what am I going to do now? I'm an ex-con, 24 years old. So for a number of more years, I got back into the game.
It's actually quite incredible because this is very different from the normal narratorship of things like this. Because
Right.
most of the time you get people, I came from a bad background, my upbringing was rough, and that's how I ended up on that road. But you've just hit the nail on the head with so many people that don't actually realize how hard it can be when you've had a good upbringing, you've had supportive parents, you've had a nice family life, and then you've gone to college where you were on a full scholarship for baseball, on track to become a professional athlete, and because of issues that you were having while you were there, not like crazy issues, these are issues that everybody has when they go away to university or college, but you didn't perform the way that you know you could have, and you ended up basically in a dead-end job. For a man like you, and I know for a person like me as well, like it's not something that I would want, and it drives you a little bit mental. And then when you got involved with this gym, and you realized that something didn't add up, and you went a bit deeper, and you went a bit deeper, and then you ended up with effectively drug dealers, and then you got caught with a car full of weed, but then you got out of that one, and then you got caught again at an airport, and you sort of were on this track of effectively self-destruction, because once you're in prison, although you did, better yourself with your personal training certification and whatnot, you're just saying there, you came out and you were thinking, well, what does an ex-con do now? But how did you get from that to onto the right path? Because I'm pretty sure this is when there's going to be that switch. Going from the mindset of being a criminal, because that's effectively what you were thinking when you got out of jail, to having a completely different trajectory in life.
You know what I started doing was, because I said I wasn't ever into getting high. So what I started doing was, okay, I'm just going to make a new hustle. I actually partnered up with a friend and bought a nightclub back in 2001, I believe. And it was called Backstage. And for people back home, when they hear this, they're going to remember this. It was a crazy club. But I had that for a year with a partner. And the club, we had DJ, obviously, but it was called Backstage. So I had live bands also. So while I was still kind of doing things I shouldn't have and hanging out with people that I shouldn't have, because it was kind of making me still want to do the old things I didn't want to go back to. I hired a local company that would search for bands and bring them into nightclubs, like what I had. And we would get local bands, or sometimes we'd get a new band trying to start up, and they're just playing clubs and whatnot. And sometimes I would need extra security. The extra security for that, remember the name of the company, was called Cal Productions. The security team was Don Frye's MMA team. It was literally the whole security team. So, these guys, I've always been weight training, so I've always been a bigger guy. And they're like, hey, man, why don't you come and try this out? And I was interested in that. I was like, okay, let me go see. I've seen it on TV, and I love to fight, and it's fun. And, it was just something that I like doing. So I went to a couple of practices, and first time I ever sparred was with Don Frye, and shit out of me. I was terrified. I was 24, 25 years old, 26 maybe at the most, and I'd never sparred in my life, and to go in there with Don Frye, who just beat Ken Shamrock and Pride, and it was a surreal thing, because I was already a fan of UFC, and I'm like, holy shit, man, I'm going to spar with Don Frye, and I always tell this story first, and I got to say it, how he talks, Don Frye, with that deep voice, and he looked at me and he goes, kid, put all your gear on and you go as hard as you can. I'm looking at him, and I go, okay, Don, I go, you're not gonna do anything. You're not gonna gear up. And he's like, no, kid, didn't put a mouthpiece or anything. And he was a badass dude, So he beat me up for like 3 or 4 rounds, and he didn't beat me up to the point where he was knocking me out, but I think it was more of a test thing to see if I'd even come back. So I came back. I ended up being a sparring partner for him, and be on his team for maybe 5 years, I think 4 to 5 years. Ended up cornering him in Pride when he fought Gary Goodridge the last time. And, he fought a big Akibono, I think, is the sumo guy he fought in Japan, K1 Hero. So, I was on my way then, and I was starting to clear my head, and I was getting more into the fighting. I was training with them. And, back then, MMA wasn't too big. It was the stuff that was still, it's cool, but it's not cool, and that was, like I said, 2001. So, ended up, training with him for like 4 or 5 years. And then I actually got a call right when I was getting ready for my first fight. Don and his team were training me. Don Frye gave me a call, and he said, hey, do you want to go to Minnesota and go to pro wrestling school? And shit, man, I grew up watching WWF at the time. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, it's the same school he went to. It's the same school Brock Lesnar went to. Road Warriors, Mr. Wonderful, all these guys. It was called, his name was Brad Reagan, the coach. And the ring and the whole weight room was in his basement dungeon, something, and he let me stay in his house. He let me stay in his house because, I was a friend of Don. And I ended up going out there and almost tearing my ACL. So I had to come back. And I took some time off, healed it up, and I still went back to finish it. But this time, I got hooked up with Brock Lesnar through Don Frye. At the time, this is when Brock was still way back before he fought, and he actually let me stay in his house the next time I went. And super nice guy, he didn't know me very well, but just through Don Frye, he gave me the keys to his house and let me stay at his house when he was on the road with WWF. And I ended up coming back home, after that, spending my time there at the camp. And I actually got invited to go to New Japan Pro Wrestling Dojo in Santa Monica. So I went back home for a couple weeks, repacked my stuff, and then moved out to Santa Monica and was training with the New Japan Pro Wrestling coaches and team, and Mr. Inoki out there in Japan. And I ended up winning a kind of a contest. There was like 60 guys, and the 2 top guys are going to go to Japan and do a wrestling match. I believe it's Satayama Super Arena. So I ended up winning, being another American, and we ended up going out there and had my first match in the arena in Japan. And it was great. I loved it. And I was really good friends with Chris Benoit, before all that stuff happened with him. And he was helping me get in. He would invite me to shows. We even worked out a couple of times at Nally Fitness back in Arizona when he'd come down and do a show and stuff. But, after the pro wrestling was done, and I actually tore my pec muscle bench pressing. So I was out for a year. And I remember Brock gave me a call, and he's like, hey, you're going to come back out and continue pro wrestling. I said, Brock, I don't have the name you have. I'm already, at this time I was maybe almost 30, 31. I go, I think I'm just going to stay here and just pick up my fighting career. He said, all right, sounds good. So I started doing that and had my first fight in Cage Rage, London. I actually lied about my record because I had 0 fights at the time. I ended up fighting a guy that had like 30 MMA fights, and he must have kicked me about 18 times in the leg until pretty much I couldn't walk, But it was a great time, and ever since then I was hooked on MMA. 6 fights total. Ended up winning a heavyweight title in New Mexico at a smaller show, and I knew I didn't have the pedigree to become a UFC fighter or champ. I knew that. Ultimately, I wanted to coach in the position I'm in now. So I wanted to be able to relate to not only just an athlete, because I've been an athlete my whole life, but also to a fighter. Getting ready for a fight, the mental aspect that nobody really thinks about, that happens, that goes beyond the physical part, and you freaking out at night because you got somebody that's ready to kill you in 2 weeks, and all you can think about is this guy. It doesn't matter what you're doing. So I fell in love with that whole thing, but I wanted to be able to relate to my fighters when they came to me and were like, Coach, I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling that way, and I'd be able to give them an answer of why, hopefully to make them feel better and maybe get over the nervousness or whatever the deal is.
Yeah, it's one of the most important things about coaching is actually understanding where somebody's coming from. And when you're saying that you were always wanting to be coaching in a fight capacity, if you hadn't at least tried your hand, then you wouldn't be in the position that you're in now. There's so many people out there that are trying to coach MMA, and they're always sort of stuck doing lower level stuff. They're not going to be getting to work with the pedigree of fighters that you work with because they've never done it. As much as you're saying, yeah, I did it because I wanted to be a coach, that's something that shouldn't be discounted. That's massive. And it's something that people can relate to in anything. It's the same if you're working in a workshop, but then you're in an office. If you've never worked on the workshop floor and you're trying to tell the guys what to do when you're sitting at a desk, there's no real understanding. And it's the same with coaching.
100%.
So
yeah, 100%.
When did you actually get into working with the likes of Brandon? Because that's such a big jump. You've gone from dabbling in pro wrestling and meeting, you met some absolute legends in your journey, which is just phenomenal. You were with Alliance for 4 years in the States. Is that correct?
Yeah. So Dominick Cruz and I are from the same hometown, Tucson, Arizona.
Right.
So we're both working at a gym. He's probably 17 years old, maybe 2 fights into his career. And he is teaching some classes, and he's kind of like at that time, he was just cleaning up the gym and trying to, make some money and train. And I was a fitness coach there, and strength and conditioning has always been my thing. I've always loved that. But we started becoming good friends. So he said, hey, Coach, I don't have any money to pay you, but can you help me get a little stronger, a little bigger? Because he was always fighting bigger guys. There wasn't smaller weight classes back then. So he was always fighting a bigger guy. I mean, the fight that he fought Uriah, he was nowhere near Uriah's size in WC days, So he would fight up to 55 at times, he was never the big guy. He was just lanky and quick and, the movement that he had. So he said, I can't pay you, Coach, but I promise you. And remember, this is Dominick Cruz at 17 years old. He said, I will become the UFC champ. And when I do, I will bring you with me when I do it. Of course, I'm like, bro, we're cool, man. Whatever. Let's just train. We were friends. And he ended up leaving maybe a year after that. And the whole time we were really close friends. And he moved to San Diego. He became a part of Alliance MMA. And he would still come to Tucson, visit his family. He would always stay with me. And at that time is when I got into the gym that I had purchased with my partner. I had my fighting career going. And when I decided to retire, because, my last fight, I think I was like 37, something like that. So I got into the fight game late, and I was already a little bit behind and too slow for some of these young guys. So a good friend of mine back home, Manny, said, George, you got all this talent. You're coaching these guys. I had a fight team back in Tucson. We did very well. Why don't you move to San Diego before you end up dead or back in prison? And I think that day or the next day, I texted Dominick Cruz. I said, man, how about if I go out to San Diego and give this a try. Because I had sold out of I got my part back out of the gym, and I didn't have any kids, I wasn't married, so why not? Took a chance, packed up my stuff. I think 2 weeks later, I was out in Alliance MMA, starting my coaching career with them.
So you got out there, and through Alliance, you started obviously working with some of the other guys. Obviously, you met Dominick Cruz in your hometown, but from your hometown, you got given basically a call out saying come to San Diego and work with Alliance. And you came in, started working there, and effectively worked your way through the ranks of the coaches doing the strength and conditioning. And because you're always thinking about the psychological aspect as well, I'm sure that has a massive impact on the fighters as well. Because I know that a lot of coaches don't. Is that basically what brought you working with Brandon Vera? Did you guys discuss and decide yourselves to bring it over to Manila, or did you was it an offer? How did that go about? How did that work?
So after maybe about a year, not even that, I was just a fitness coach, and I would do some classes at Alliance in San Diego. The strength and conditioning coach that was there when I got there, he actually left out of the country to take another job. So I was able to actually get in there and become the head strength and conditioning coach for Alliance. So, I did get to work with, obviously Dominick, with Jeremy Stevens, and Gano, everybody that's been to there. Been blessed to be able to not only coach them, but also learn from them, because we always got to learn. Like I said, it's a mental thing. There's always something new. There's always some new technique that, that you can do to improve this or improve that. After that, I became the head coach here for about 4 years. Brandon had got done with his UFC contract and was offered a ONE FC contract. So I believe I started training Brandon for his first ONE FC fight. It was after he had just fought Shogun, I believe, in UFC or something like that. And we came out here. We had our first fight. We won. And came out here again the following year. And then I think it was after that fight, Brandon was like, "Hey, coach, do you think you would move out to the Philippines and help me open up an alliance and be one of my partners?" And man, it was a tough decision. I went back and forth for a few months on it. He didn't give me any pressure. He just said, "Hey, here's an offer. This is what's going on." And we talked about me being an owner in the gym and everything, and let me really sit down and think about this, because it's not just like moving to another state. You've done it, so you know how big of a deal it is, leaving my parents and stuff was going to be a hard thing because we're a close family. After thinking about it, and I even went to Dominick Cruz because, we've always been close friends. We talked about it, and a lot of people didn't want me to come out, not because I'm the best coach ever, but the relationship that I have with a lot of fighters. It was more personal than anything. I'm the type of coach that I really get into my athletes. I really care what they're feeling, what they're going through. If there's anything I can do, even outside of our coaching, my phone is always on. And in turn, if they give me that much more, it only benefits them. It makes their life better. They get that win, or whatever the deal is, whatever the sport is I'm coaching in. But sometimes I get a little bit too involved with my athletes, and I get too concerned. I get overprotective. But they all do know that I love them to death, and I'll do anything for them. And in return, you see my social media stuff, man. My clients kill themselves for me. My athletes kill themselves for me, and it's a mutual respect. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, man. I actually really enjoy seeing your social media stuff come through, because you can see that bond between you and whoever you're working with, whether it's one of the girls doing strength and conditionings, or whether it's one of the fighters who's actually gearing up towards a fight, or whoever it is. And it's just something quite special. I mean, even on that night when I saw you, because at the boxing event that I met George, he was the compere, he was the announcer. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the night, he invited Brandon Vera into the ring. And it wasn't just like a coach inviting a fighter into the ring. It was like he just asked his brother to step into the ring and join him. And you really saw that connection right there, which very seldom do you really see between a coach and a client. And I don't think it's probably beyond that now with Brandon and yourself. You know, that still is very prevalent when you saw you two together and when you see the social media. And it kind of solidifies the importance of effectively your whole journey and how you got to this point. Because if you hadn't experienced everything that you did, you wouldn't be this kind of coach.
Yeah.
You would probably be a little bit more calculated, a little bit more academic. And that's not what is really needed at all, especially in the fight game. So on that, now that you're in Manila and now that you're building up the gym, who can be part of the training? And what is your actual vision for the gym in Manila?
So going back to, just want to touch on something that you brought up with Brandon in our relationship. We just came off a tough loss, a couple weeks ago in Japan. And that was our first loss together as a coach and fighter. So it was different. We hadn't lost in, 5 years? Because, he fought once a year for a while there because he'd done some movies and stuff. But going back to our relationship, I'm a few years older than Brandon, but he's always felt like that big brother to me, and he's helped me along so much with my coaching because I coach Brandon. Yes, I'm his coach, but he also coaches me. And when I don't understand something or I don't understand or I can't get a certain technique down, even when I'm coaching my other fighters, Mark Striegel, just regular clients in general, I always ask Brandon, like, hey, what about this? Does your foot go there? Does your hand go there? He's just a coach. He turns into Coach Brandon, which just helps me with my coaching tools, So to have somebody like Brandon to not only be like a big brother, but a mentor in the sport, it's been special. Seriously, it has. Just because all the knowledge he has, not just because we're so close, but Brandon is one of the most well-rounded athletes I've ever trained in this fight game. People don't really understand his pedigree in wrestling, or they don't know it, his pedigree in jiu-jitsu. So he's really well-rounded. So for me to be able to soak in that knowledge, and for him to be, me and him be a part of the same gym now, be owners, and both can coach at the gym, and just bring that knowledge that he has, that we have, that any of our coaching staff has, or fighters back in San Diego. That's what we want to bring out to the Philippines, and help elevate and give maybe guys and girls an opportunity in becoming a coach and becoming a fighter, somehow, some way to put money in their bank account, food on their tables. I have one of my female clients, Myra. She's been with me for over a year now, and I've certified her through my certification, and now she's making an income being a coach. So it's pretty cool to see, and also she's winning these titles. So it's cool to see that I was a part of that, and now that I'm helping out Mark out here, and we got him signed to a movie deal that's coming up also. So he's got that going on, and we're looking to get him into the UFC early next year. So just want to give more people here opportunities that I had that brought me here. Maybe I can give them back and help somebody with their career and help them, help them feed their family, make their dreams come true.
That's actually really beautiful, man, because so much of the time people will come into, especially areas like Manila, Bangkok, or some of the areas in Asia where a lot of the people are not so affluent, and they come in and say, oh yeah, I'll do it because nobody else has done it. And underneath that is really, I'm going to do it because nobody else has done it and I can make money. But that's not what this is about. Because on top of the obvious, which is obviously the more exercise people get, improves their lives in general, more mentally stable, they're going to be more physically able, they're going to be able to protect their family, they're going to be able to be more functional just in general life. But it's beyond that with what you're talking about. You're more talking about the practicality side of things. So within my coaching system, I've got 4 pillars that I work with everybody, because what I do is more on lifestyle side of things. So I've got a lot of guys that are maybe really, really great in business, but struggle with their health and struggle with other components in life, which is why I use these four. And it's physical, psychological, personal, and practical. And most of the time when I speak to coaches, especially strength and conditioning coaches, or especially, jiu-jitsu or MMA or kickboxers or boxers, it's all about the physical and the psychological. But for you, you're talking about bringing people and really connecting with them on all four of the pillars. Physical and psychological, yeah, that's a given. It needs to be done. It's part of in fact, it's the core of the coaching that you do as strength and conditioning and MMA. But creating that personal connection and giving them the opportunity to practically improve their lives, to improve a career based on the fight game, or to give them an opportunity at a job that they would never have an opportunity to do before by becoming a coach and by having the guidance of somebody who's been through the fire, who's seen it go wrong and has seen it go well, and actually direct them in the right way. And bringing that from the States into Manila is truly admirable.
I've never admitted this on any type of interview, but it's something that I've only recently discovered that I battle with it more. And when you're talking about the psychological part, working out for me is what keeps me okay, if that makes any sense, mentally. I suffer from depression. I know a lot of people do, and a lot of people are coming out now, which is great. And it's actually helped me. My girlfriend has helped me with this a lot, and it's been tough because I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why. I wasn't able to control it. So I actually went and saw a therapist here and got some, stuff out. We talked, and I used to see a sports psychologist back in San Diego that would help me. Just questions I had on how to relate with not just myself, but with my athletes. But it is a different bond. It has to be. It's almost two different bonds. It's friendship and then it's coach, because you still have to have that respect. So, Fraser, honestly, it's the only time that I feel 100%. That makes sense.
It makes complete sense. I mean, I'm very lucky. I don't suffer from depression or anything, but one thing I do know is that I have a bad temper. Naturally, it's something that I've had to struggle with a little bit. And people that know me now would be like, Fraser doesn't have a bad temper. But people that used to work with me when I worked in oil and gas, they'd be like, yeah, I can see that. And it's because of training and because of making sure that I am continuously active that I'm able to put the techniques that I've learned and that I now coach into reality. And it's exactly what you're talking about there, is that people will be struggling with things like depression, like psychological issues that more people have than are actually admitting. And I know it's great that more and more people are talking about it now, but it's not an uncommon thing. And it's wonderful when you see things like Mental Health Day and whatnot come up, because there's such a negative stigma towards mental health that they don't realize that whether it's depression or whether you're just not able to focus, that it's not necessarily something that you should be taking medication for. It's something that if you alter your lifestyle and train and make sure you're eating the correct things, that your body can take care of it. And it's quite miraculous when you actually see it in action. Do you know what, man? Thank you for admitting that on the podcast, because for a lot of people, they'll be listening to you and thinking, God, he's just this big tough guy. He's able to do whatever he wants to do because he's just that type of guy. But sometimes you've got to admit that little bit of vulnerability so people truly understand the work that gets put in and why it's so important and what the results can actually become from it. And that's really quite spectacular.
Yeah, I don't think I really realized or even really thought about it until I admitted I had it. It wasn't something. You said it right. People look at me like, "Oh, big tough guy," but maybe that's why I didn't want to talk about it, because maybe it embarrassed me, because I have this persona. I have this image that I thought I had to always keep. You know, that's a lot. That's a lot of years in being in that drug game, because it's either you or them. You know, and I always thought people are always wanting something from me. People are always only cool with me because I have something. So I battle with that stuff all the time. It's hard for me to trust people at all. But when I do, then you're my boy for life. You're my family for life, you know? So just got to break over that. And I'm trying to see the good before I see the bad. I promise you, but it's hard. It's hard because of the bad that's been done to me. People that I thought really loved me left me in some really bad situations when I was in that drug gang, you know? So it's very hard for me to trust, very bad trust issues, you know, and the whole depression thing. And, you know, having PTSD from prison, I was diagnosed. A lot of stuff that, you know, to be honest, I was embarrassed to admit that, you know, but now seeing people commit suicide, hearing these stories, like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be a statistic like that, you know. Maybe me coming out and saying this because of my image, and maybe that'll help somebody. I don't know.
I'm
You
sure
know,
it
they can
will.
always, you know, I hope so, you know, because it's not easy. I used to say, don't think about being depressed. It's not like that. It really is not, you know. You can tell yourself that all day, but it takes a lot more than that to get out of that state. So I'm learning, and hopefully I can help somebody in my situation. But I got a strong support system behind me here. My girlfriend's great. Her family's been great. So my family back home is always checking on me. I got Brandon here. I'm okay here. You know, I'm trying to be as happy as I can in my own head.
Yeah.
But
You've got all the right
yeah,
things around you there. You've got the support network. You're keeping active. You're obviously in great shape. And you've also acknowledged it. And that's one of the biggest things, because I know this is very, very similar because of who I've spoken to in the past, but in the British culture especially, men don't cry. You've got to be this, stone-faced
yeah,
stoic, which is, I've got a wee bit of a gripe with the word stoic, because people think stoic means men don't cry. The word stoic, if you go back in history, actually means being a warrior when it means to be a warrior, and be a poet when you need to be a poet, and be a lover when you need to be a lover. That's stoicism. But nowadays people
yeah. I
don't
like that.
realize that. Yeah. So when you think of stoicism, that's real stoicism. That's what a real Spartan warrior would have been like. Even a Viking. People only think of the negatives, but back then there was a real brotherhood where they shared stories, emotions, and poetry and singing. But when you look at the culture of today, especially in sort of like the UK, the US, and I know that the Mexican culture as well is quite strict with that as well. They're like, oh, you're a man, you're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
It's quite toxic in a lot of ways, that it subdues a lot of the emotions that really you wouldn't have any issues with if you just actually spoke about it. But because you bottle it up, you end up in a much worse situation later on in life. So
Exactly.
and I really like the fact that we've kind of veered off of what we were talking about, but we've veered off into a very important conversation, which is also very relevant to the fact that people love to isolate different situations. So they isolate things like, no, you've got depression, so talking about MMA has no bearings on it. Well, hold on a second here. You're talking about a vehicle. You're talking about a human vehicle. And if you've got your car, yeah, the steering wheel and the brake isn't actually connected, but it's part of the same machine. So surely you're going to want to make sure they're all working well instead of just focusing on that one component. And that's what you're
Yep.
talking about
100%.
there.
Yep. And I think too, also, I've seen fitness, and I'm not just talking, and I want you to ask a question about what type of people will have an alliance. It's open to everybody from years 5 age to 80 to 90. It doesn't matter, because you don't have to be a fighter to work on an alliance. You can always train like one. You can learn self-defense. We're going to have women's jiu-jitsu classes where women can learn self-defense. We're going to have TRX classes, kettlebell classes. It's not just about fighting. That's the fighting part is just what helped us get our name out there. But we're actually a full fitness gym. We're going to have cryotherapy in there. We'll have a VIP lounge for the people who spend a little bit more money and want to have that access to the lounge and 24 hours. We got big, like a life-size aquarium pool that you can actually look into. So it's not just your typical gym where you go lift some weights. We want to build a lifestyle, a family lifestyle where everybody knows each other. You know, you're not just member 4142, swipe your card and get your ass in there. It's, hey, it's so-and-so, it's so-and-so. Hey, how's the mom? How's that? It sounds corny, but we all love when either a waiter or a bartender or somebody remembers our names. It just adds that little touch, you know, in the service industry part. But, you know, we have cookouts with the gym. We have family days with the Lions. So it's really a culture that we're trying to build, and hopefully it'll catch on here because our plans are to open 5 Alliance gyms in Manila. You know, after this, we'll do a couple more, and we'll hopefully by the next few years have 5 here in Manila.
Man, that sounds amazing. You know what? Next time I'm in Manila, I'm definitely wanting to come by and visit the gym because it sounds like quite something.
Yeah, for sure, man. We should be opening. We'll have our grand opening January 1. So next time we come down, we'll definitely get you down here to the gym and check it out.
Beautiful. Love it. Okay, man. Well, this is the big question then. If somebody wanted to get involved and somebody wanted to reach out and find out more about it, what would be your, first of all, what would be the advice that you would give them? Just a short piece of advice to say to them what to do for themselves. And second of all, how do they reach out? How do they get in contact with you and with the gym so that when it opens, they can get themselves through that door?
As far as the fighting part, like I said, that's it's kind of a separate business within the gym. You know, it's got its own space for the gym. It's a small part of the gym. So people can come in, you can train like a fighter. You don't ever have to get hit. It's up to you if you want to spar. But we are encouraging people to come and get into fitness. Fitness in Manila now is growing. And, you know, we all got to make money and pay bills, obviously. But like I said, our main concern is to kind of uplift the fitness culture here. And I'm actually working on a fitness show that we should be taping in January. And it's going to be a pretty big network here in the Philippines. I'll keep you posted on that. But so it's more of just fitness. It's Alliance Training Center. It's not Alliance MMA. So come in, take some classes. If you want to be a fighter, at some point early next year, we'll have a tryout. I think almost every fighter in the ONE FC roster has asked when our gym is going to open. So we're actually going to have a ONE FC cage in the gym. It's actually on top of the gym on the 3rd floor, hanging over the gym. It's a cool concept. I'll send you some pictures once it's up. But you know, anybody can come and train. Like I said, we'll train kids from 5 years old all the way to adults, 80, 90 years old. As long as you want to work out, we'll be there. And as far as how to get in contact with me, George Castro on Facebook, Coach Castro _ Instagram. Ask me any questions you guys need. You know, obviously, I won't be giving. I've done this once, and I've had people want full workouts. So that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about any questions on how to get started in MMA or fitness in general, or how to become a coach, all that stuff. Because I hope that I really can bring that opportunity to more people. It just feels good to help somebody, man. Because there's many times when I needed help, and they were there for me. People were there for me. So I just want to give it back.
That's awesome, man. I'm going to put all that stuff in the show notes. So just a quick one for everybody that's listening there. If you are in the Manila area, and whether you want to be a fighter, whether you just want to get into fitness, it doesn't matter if you're a man, woman, or child, this sounds like it's a really worthwhile gym to check out. And with the coaching staff that are there, especially George, who I know George personally, and he's a great guy and a great coach. So you're going to get a lot more than simply being told what to do, as I'm sure you can tell from this podcast. And if you've got any questions, you can reach out to George. If you can't get in touch with George for whatever reason, you can reach out to myself at Noble Life, and I'll point you in the right direction for that as well. George, mate,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you very, very much for being on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you, man. It was fun. Let's do it again.
You have been listening to the Noble Life podcast. To find out more about our guests, please take a look at the episode's show notes. This episode was brought to you by Noble Life, the online health and lifestyle coaching system. Noble Life works both with men and women living hectic lifestyles who know that they must improve their life's balance, their health and their happiness to become their best version. Noble Life coaches each aspect required to achieve this through the 4 pillars of physical, psychological, personal and practical. To find out more about what Noble Life can do for you, please visit our website at www.noblehealthcoach.com. Noble Life also now has an online store where you can get apparel which is designed to remind and keep you in tune with the Noble Code and to continuously strive towards better health and balance in our lives. You can check that out at our website at www.noblehealthcoach.com.